you break into a sweat with even the thought of having company? I'm here to help. After trying just a few of my hosting tips, you'll be more than ready to say, come on over. Today, we're going to talk about my top 5 resources for recipes. Now, I know what you're thinking. We have the internet, so why would I even need anything besides that for recipes?
We have technology.
And I'm going to explain to you why in this episode. My number 1 resource is church cookbooks. I'd like you to just take a look at the cover of this one. Oh, that's a little bit scary 80s, and it is! And because it's scary 80s, the woman on the phone, it has 80s style recipes, which means nobody was overly concerned with fat or sugar content, which means these recipes taste great. My mom and my grandmother and many of my relatives and dear church friends have recipes in here that are featured in my kitchen even today. I cook out of this recipe book all the time. They're not complicated recipes. In fact, most of them don't have more than 10 ingredients, if that many. They're just really good. So I pick them up everywhere I can. Here's one from a church in Indiana. Here's one from a Methodist church in Michigan. Here's one, actually this is not a church cookbook. This is a lab cookbook when I worked at a hospital. Great recipes, and you often get family recipes in these church cookbooks or put together cookbooks. Love them. So that's my number 1. My second favorite recipe place is this book right here, and you need to get this book. And here's why. 5 ingredients or less. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? Like, how could anything be good with 5 ingredients or less? And it's for the slow cooker or crock pot. This is a must-have. And whenever someone tells me, you know, I'm not a good cook, I don't even know how to cook, I'll say, do you have a crock pot? Usually they do, and I'm like, this is all you need. This covers vegetables, soups, main dishes, all kinds of dishes. And I think this bears repeating, 5 ingredients or less. You can cook, you can do it with this cookbook. So that brings to mind other crock pot cookbooks I love. Take a look at this. This little, it's barely a book. It's falling apart. It's yellowed and browned with age. There are no pictures in this.
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Well, some people use their imagination.
This is a rival crock pot cookbook from the 70s, the 1970s, not from the future, from the past. And in here are all kinds of great, very flavorful recipes. I go to this all the time. In fact, one of my top meals requested is a crock pot meatloaf. That's right, a crock pot meatloaf. I think I'm gonna make that at some point for y'all to see, but until then, try to find these older crock pot, it's almost a pamphlet, it's not even really a full book. And you can see I have marked many pages, I've made notes. Right here, Magic Meatloaf. This is old school, folks, old school. Wonderful to have. Then there are fancier, maybe nicer. Here's a Betty Crocker slow cooker cookbook that actually is ring bound. So it's easier to lay it flat on the counter. I love these cookbooks.
Ooh, I feel so fancy.
Even if you only use 1/3 of the recipes in these cookbooks, totally worth it. And you can usually find them at garage sales, estate sales. Somebody's gonna have a cookbook you like in that way. All right, then we get down to Better Homes and Gardens. Now, your mother, your grandmother probably had the ring-bound version of this cookbook. I just happen to have the new version of this paper. It doesn't have a lot of photos in it. It is pretty straight up recipes, but these are no-fail recipes. Some of them are a little more complicated than others, but it has desserts. It has main dishes, sides, dips, soups, anything you want to. Good explanations of how you do things like cut things, chop things, remove fat from meat, that kind of thing. Always a great resource. In fact, I have another Betty Crocker cookbook other than the slow cooker that I often go to. And again, these are not super modern. I mean, even the typeface is old-fashioned.
There's no school like the old school.
The photos are not, restaurant quality. It just has really, really great recipes in here. You can write at them and not have to worry about it. And that's another reason that I don't love internet recipes, is that you cannot notate when you're online. What if a recipe had too much salt or not enough salt? How could you notate that? Well, you couldn't. You'd have to print it off or screen capture it and then use a stylus. I mean, to me, it is easier to work off of actual paper. I'm not saying I don't use internet recipes. I do. And I have been known to print them off and then make my notes in handwriting on the paper recipe. Works every time. Now, there are social media pages that are nothing but people demonstrating how to cook things. I have some favorites, I'm sure you do too. Those are great for ideas, and you can use their recipes. Again, you'd have to screen capture or print it out and make your own notes, but you can do that. It's certainly very modern and doable. So I'm not opposed to the internet. Also, the internet is great for substitutions. Let's say that you're cooking something that calls for a spice that not only you don't have, but you're never gonna have, like saffron.
Do you know what saffron is?
No, you're probably never gonna have that. Star of anise.
That's a made-up word.
I learned something today.
Unusual things. Maybe you don't have a celery seed or something like that, something very specific. Usually there is a substitute for that, and you can just Google that. You can go on there, substitute for star of anise. It will tell you what to use and it will be just as good. So the internet is a great place to look. Now, those are my top 5 resources. However, I have a bonus resource, and that is magazines. Yes, good old-fashioned, get them in the snail mail recipes. My top one is, of course, Southern Living. Southern Living has more than recipes in it, but it has pages and pages of delicious things, and they usually have themes. So this is going to be I picked this one up because this was chock full Thanksgiving recipe, so it has a lot of meat, sides, pumpkin things. Wonderful resource, wonderful. Another one, this is literally what it is, all recipes. It's all recipes. And there are some in here that I'm like, I don't know.
It looks like you slipped in cow and baked it.
And they do this great comparison thing, like you can go for full fat or you can try to lighten it up. Comparison recipes. Food and Wine is another great magazine for recipes. It is about food and wine.
Mind blown.
And it tells you good pairings. It tells you when to serve wine and when not to. I don't use this heavily for recipes. They're a little more complicated, maybe a little more frou-frou, but it's worth looking through. And of course, you can never go wrong with Martha Stewart's Living magazines.
Now, that's a good thing.
And it has recipes in there, it has cooking tips, it has all kinds of house and kitchen and garden related topics that kind of get your mind going on how can I change things up. And really, isn't that why we're looking for new recipes? Is that you kind of have your top 5 to 10 that you make all the time, but you're just ready for a change. You're ready, your family's ready. You just want to try something new for a holiday or a gathering. You need some resources to do that. So it could be online, it could be on paper. There are plenty of resources for trying new recipes, and I recommend that you do that. So, where can you get these books? Well, we're going to link some of them below. You're on your own for the Rival 1970s book. You're gonna have to really search for that one. But most of these books, not the church cookbooks, but the slow cooker, the magazines, the regular cookbooks, we will link below. But don't forget to check out yard sales, estate sales, and used bookstores. Amazon is the most friendly for modern, recent. Old school is the best resource for old school. So beef up your cookbook library, or chicken up, or lamb up, or turkey up your cookbook selection today, and then make someone feel special the next time that they come to your house and say, what are we having? Today we're going to talk about my top, I'm going to start that again because I need a drink. Is there any vodka? So get out there and look for them. What's wrong with me? Get out there and look for them? Could I be less specific? Good thing it cuts off right here. Right here. I have clothes on, people. I have clothes on. They just don't match. I have slippers on. Just in case I need to kill something.
Come on over. Now go make someone feel special today.